Welcome to the Word for 2022. Today we finished up the Old Testament book of Esther. We're in chapters 9 and 10. I'm including chapter 10 because there's only 3 verses in that chapter. As we begin chapter 9, the day came when Haman's evil plot to exterminate the Jews arrived. But there was also a second edict that had gone out, and on this very same day, the Jews were allowed to assemble and defend themselves. In verse 1, this is what we read of chapter 9. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews did in fact defend themselves, and God's unseen hand was there to protect them. As you read this chapter, you'll find 3 phrases that are repeated, and this is the phrase, "But they did not lay their hands on the plunder." Now the Jews had the right, if someone attacked them, to take care of them by killing them, but also then taking their possessions. But the Jews decided not to touch any of the plunder. Why? Because they were not the aggressors, but the defenders. After this great victory, it says that their sorrow was turned to joy, and their mourning was turned into a celebration. Following the victory, Mordecai even sent a letter out to all the Jews everywhere, stating that they were to celebrate and commemorate the 14th and 15th days of Adar. And on those days, they were to have days of feasting and joy, the giving of presents of food to one another, and they were to give gifts to the poor. They were to do this from generation to generation, forever. It still is done today. The festival is known as Purim. In chapter 10, the very last verse, there's something you should also notice. It says about Mordecai that he was a Jew second in rank to King Xerxes. He was prominent among the Jews. He was held in high esteem among all the Jewish people because he worked for the good of his people and he spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. When I read that verse, it reminded me of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Joseph did the exact same thing. He worked for the good of his people, and he spoke up for the welfare of all of his relatives. Today, modern-day Purim is still celebrated. Today it's a national holiday, and it begins in the synagogue. People gather together, and the scroll of Esther is read for all the people to hear. Some people even dress up in costumes, their favorite characters. Whenever Mordecai or Esther's name is mentioned, people cheer. But when Haman's name is mentioned, people hiss, they stomp, and they yell. Well, the celebration then continues as they leave the synagogue. They go out into the streets and then into their homes. There's singing and dancing, there's costumes, there's a parade, and there is feasting. Now the people also, they give to charity, and they give to at least 2 different people. They give generously, reflecting the fact that God had been so generous to them as he extended grace and protection over them. Devotional writer Wendy Blight said this, "Purim is a celebration of the triumph of justice. Still today, the Jews stand together against modern-day Hamans who threaten Israel and the entire Middle East with annihilation." As you know, still today, Israel is threatened on every side. And as we think about Israel, we should also be reminded that Jesus told us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you for joining the Word for 2022.